right.
Keep moving, Kafir!
But it is not always easy.
Jump out, Alihan!
17-year-old Walter Gurney has a passion to see Afghans come to know Jesus.
Jesus Christ is the Savior.
It's a passion that could cost him everything.
No, about the ransom.
A cheater! Get away!
Love your enemies.
Kill the Kafir who brought his false god to the eagle's nest.
Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you.
Discover a world where knowing Jesus is a matter of life and death. Lamplighter Theater presents Escape from the Eagle's Nest. Go to lamplighter.net. Lamplighter.net.
And now, Fastened Like Nails with Dr. Mark Hamby.
Welcome to Fastened Like Nails. I'm Mark Hamby, and once again, I'm here in London, England at the Soundhouse Studio. I'm going to be sharing Ecclesiastes chapter 3 today. I'm going solo. Miss Molly Mayo is one of our directors in two of our new dramas, Courage of Nikolai and The Wonderful Door, about to be changed to the name or title Behind the Door. And so that's why we're here in London, England. Most of our staff is here with us. They're doing all kinds of editing and marketing and videotaping and interviews and so forth. It's been an amazing time so far. This is just day one, and we're actually an hour and a half ahead of time. That's never happened before in the last 15 years. And I'm just super excited. God has been so amazingly good to us. I know He always is, but this particular trip, we were driving through Wales, and we were asking God to lead us for dinner. We were all super hungry, and we were in this town. It was on the seashore, and someone told us about this restaurant. I think its name was Salty's or something like that, and we went there, and she said, sorry. She goes, you needed reservations like a week ago. And next restaurant, same thing. Every restaurant in the entire town, probably close to a dozen restaurants, packed. We couldn't even get a reservation, for 2 hours. It just wasn't going to happen. We were hungry. We're going to wait 2 hours. So we went to the next town of Tenby, and beautiful seaside little town up on a cliff overlooking the ocean. And we walked around, and again, no availability. And went to this, I think it was like a 14th century old home, now converted into a restaurant. And she looked at me. I must have looked pitiful, but she said, we'll get you in. And so we went in there, sat down, and I heard the group behind us. It was a mother, father, two children, a little boy about 9 years old. And the father said something about a birthday. I just thought I'd turn around and say, whose birthday? And the wife looked and says, it's my husband's, his 40th. And I thought, oh, that's awesome. Happy birthday, And he heard my accent, which I didn't know I had, but I guess if you're in Wales, you sound American probably. And he said, where are you from? And I told him we're from America. And he said, what brings you out here? And I told him that we had come to do these recordings for Courage of Nikolai and Behind the Door. And, we come to England often to record genuine British actors. He said, well, tell me more. What are the stories about? And I started telling him about these are with Christian values and, from an eternal perspective, giving parents and schools and churches stories that can help children grow in their faith and grow by embracing godly, eternal, biblical values. I held nothing back. I rarely hold anything back. If people are going to ask me something, then to me that's like an open door. And usually it just shuts the conversation down immediately, or people want to know more. And in this case, he was just so excited about what he heard. It was like Christians, Bible. And he immediately got on his phone. He goes, what's the name of your organization? I told him Lamplighter Ministries, lamplighter.net. He immediately got on the phone and they said, oh, I've got to look these up. I've got I've got to read one of these books to my family, and I've got to listen to one of the dramas. And I asked him if we had a CD with us from one of the dramas, and he just laughed. He says, "Is that like a cassette?" I thought, no, CDs, they're still in existence among homeschoolers in the States, but yeah, I guess they don't use CDs around here in Europe anymore. Anyways, we laughed, and I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll do something better." And I looked at one of our staff members, and I said, "I think we have a book in our car." We took several with us in our luggage. It was Teddy's Button. And I said, "The book that your family is about to receive is one of the best children's book I have ever read in my life." And I think it's on its 25th printing. And they went out to get the book. They brought it back. And I said, "Here is a gift from us." And I said, "I promise you, this will be one of the best children's books you have ever read." And of course, he's got a 9-year-old boy, which is a perfect age, reading this story. He looked at me and he said, "What's the title again?" I said, "Teddy's Button." And he just looked with wide eyes and he said, "My son's name is Theodore and we call him Teddy." And I was like, praise God, only God. And that happened throughout our visit here in England. Everywhere we went, God would place someone in our lives that we were able to give a book to and share the love of Jesus. So really excited about that. And with that said, as an introduction, we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and I'm going to title this, "To Expect the Unexpected." And so if you've never studied Ecclesiastes 3, maybe you've heard a song from the 1960s, There's a time for everything. There's a season for everything. A time to be born, a time to die, time to plant, time to pluck, time to kill, time to heal, and so forth. I forget the name of the group that sang that song, but it's a very popular song, quite catchy. Once you get the tune in your head, you can't get it out. But this particular song in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, or poem, is a beautiful form of artistry. This is written with some of the most beautiful symmetry that I've ever seen in the Bible. With that said, I want you to picture this. I'm going to read an abbreviated form of this, and just try to catch it, try to feel it. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck that which has been planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break, a time to build, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, time to dance, time to cast, time to gather, time to embrace, and time to refrain, time to seek, time to lose, time to keep, time to cast, time to tear, time to sow, time to be silent, time to speak, time to love, time to hate, time for peace, time for war. And so you can kind of feel, the beauty of this poem. It is a masterpiece, to be sure. But one of the things I want to convey in not just what this means, but how it means it, and you've heard me say that before, that the truths that are being conveyed here are written in a very stylistic way. For example, I want you to picture this being written on a chalkboard or a whiteboard. When I say time to be born and time to die, I'm going to place that in a sense of desirable and undesirable event. Okay, so to be born is desirable, to die is undesirable. So picture, I'll place D, the letter D, in front of this, born, die, D first and then U after that. So picture the DU, desirable, undesirable, born, die, desirable, undesirable. Okay, so we're going to picture them in that pattern. Plant, pluck, desirable, undesirable. Kill, heal, undesirable, desirable. Break, build, undesirable, desirable. Okay, you get the picture. If you write all these out, you will see that this is not only perfect symmetry in the way that I've given them to you, but you've got couplets in the beginning and at the end. They match. DU, DU, and at the very bottom, DU, DU. Then you've got triplets. You've got UD, 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 and then you've got triplets on the other side, from the other center, DU, DU, DU. I know this may sound confusing to some of you, but these are like musical notes. It is perfect symmetry. It's gorgeous. How this ends, how this begins, it ends with perfect symmetry, musical symmetry, poetic symmetry. It's just gorgeous, at least at first glance. Now, if you were to actually see this. And some of you that receive our Sunday early morning lamplighter moments, reflections, I think we call them, you can actually see this. And so if you're not receiving them, you might want to receive them because this is worth taking a look at. Just go to lamplighter.net and request the Sunday morning moments or Sunday morning reflections. But to see this in this beautiful frame, it's just gorgeous. Again, like I said, at first glance. But something unusual happens in the very next verse. So after this poem, song, Solomon writes this in verse 9. What profit then has the laborer in all his toil? What? That doesn't make sense. You've got this beautiful, symmetrical, musical masterpiece, poetic masterpiece. Then if it's as beautiful and symmetrical as I'm saying it is, then why would Solomon say immediately after penning this, what profit is there in the laborer in all his toil? Doesn't make sense. So, seems like an odd question to ask, but it's actually a perfect question to ask. You see, I made a purposeful error when I wrote the poem. I'm sorry. So I had to do that because you wouldn't be able to catch the significance, the drama behind this unless I did exactly that, purposefully create an error in the very last stanza, the very last verse. Remember how I said it ended with DU, desirable, undesirable, peace, war. Let me just read a few of the ending ones. To cast and to keep, desirable, undesirable. To tear and to sow, undesirable, desirable. Silence, speak. Undesirable, silence, desirable, speak. Love, hate, desirable, undesirable. And then it should end, like I said, with this purposeful error, peace, war, desirable, undesirable. But that's not how it reads. That's not how Solomon wrote it. Solomon purposefully changes the last stanza and reverses it to war, peace, undesirable, desirable, which makes this entire poem asymmetrical. It's not symmetrical like it's supposed to be. The Hebrew, an Hebraic reader, listener would have been listening to this poem and would have anticipated, expected it to end peace, war. In fact, when Solomon changes the last verse and places it out of order, that's similar to a beautiful orchestrated piece. You've gone to the orchestra. You've gone to this beautiful concert, the Philharmonic. You're at the very end, and there's this beautiful violin piece that's about to end, and the flutes in the background. And then all of a sudden, someone clangs on the cymbals, completely out of order, and it ends like this, with this dissonance. That's exactly what Solomon does here. And so why? Well, now that fits with what Solomon is saying. Solomon is saying, what profit is there in all that the laborer toils? What profit? You see, if life cannot move onward with some expectation, you do everything right, then there should be this expectation, but all of a sudden you get cancer, or a child dies, or you get fired, or you get a health crisis, or you get misunderstood and you get stabbed in the back, or whatever happens in life, you're doing everything well. Your spouse leaves you. Someone's unfaithful. A church, starts to complain about their pastor, or something happens in life. Things are going so beautifully well. Things are going so perfect. Then all of a sudden, this asymmetrical event takes place. And there's this dissonance. And you're like, what is going on? How did this happen? Why is this happening? And Solomon writes this masterpiece, and he places this last verse out of order to be able to ask that question. If we can't trust God, if we can't expect certain things to end in certain ways, then why bother? That's what he's saying. Why bother if I can't expect life to have a certain amount of certainty? If I raise my children a certain way that God has directed me and they turn away from God, why bother? Why work so hard if things are going to take a turn for the worst and I lose everything. Why bother? Why put so much effort into this church when the previous church I was in already collapsed and split? I'm not going to bother anymore. You see, the next verse explains why we need to bother. And this is what Solomon writes. I have seen the task which God has given the sons of men to be exercised in it. You see, God brings unexpected, asymmetrical, dissonant type of events into our lives to exercise us. And the word exercise is the word for humbled, to humble us. The word task is also translated business, carrying the idea of our occupation or our work that keeps us busy so we can put bread on the table. But that word exercised, it means to be depressed, downbeaten, browbeaten, afflicted, or humbled. Though a godly life will give you a good return and good rewards, there are going to be times when God gives us something unexpected and undesirable, and those are the events that God uses to teach us the most. That's when you really know whether you're able to trust God fully or not. I've seen so many people in my lifetime that they get something that happens, this asymmetrical event, this curveball. In fact, I was just talking with a woman here in England. She messed up in her marriage. And for 23 years, she turned away from God because she felt so ashamed. Thank God she's back walking with the Lord. She's joyful again. You know what she said to me? She said, I knew that Jesus died for my sins. I forgot about the resurrection. That the old things are passed away and all things can become new. And so what does Solomon tell us? One more verse, ready? After all of this that he's given us to be exercised, all these unexpected events, they humble us. And unless we're humbled, God can't lift us up. That's what he's doing. 1 Peter chapter 5, after you've suffered a while, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, settle you. Why? Just before he says in 1 Peter chapter 5, he says, therefore humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, that he might lift you up. That's why he brings these unexpected, undesirable events. And then he says this, after you've been exercised. You ready? This is the grand finale. This is the real concert. The concert, in this dissonance, in this asymmetrical moment where it seems to have ended, but then, he says, why bother? And then he says, because these are the things that are exercising you. These are the things that are humbling you. The concert really hasn't ended. It ends now with this next verse. He has made everything beautiful in its time. A time for everything. Even a time for unexpected events. Even a time for those difficult situations. Even a time for God to bring us at a very low place so that he could lift us up. Why? So that he can make everything beautiful in his time. What a beautiful, albeit unexpected, conclusion. I think we can be comforted in the fact that God is in complete control. He is writing a story more beautiful and intricate than anything that we could have imagined. And we must trust him to write our story. So don't lose heart. God is making something beautiful out of you in his time. God bless.
You've been listening to Fastened Like Nails, a presentation of Lamplighter Ministries. Our mission is to make ready a people prepared for the Lord by building Christ-like character, one story at a time. To learn more about our family collection of rare books, dramatic audios, or guild programs, visit lamplighter.net. To hear more podcasts, search for Fastened Like Nails wherever you listen to podcasts.